Assalamu alaikum, dear listeners. We are continuing with the reading of the book Fatima is Fatima by Dr. Ali Shariyati. And today we are going to begin with chapter 7 and page 44 of the book. We would try to finish this chapter today. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Chapter 7, the title is What Should Be Done? Ali distributes freedom. People are in love with Ali, and yet the young intellectuals are aware of the weaknesses and the decline of Ali's followers. The main reason for the contradiction is not having come to know, it is coming to know what has value. Love and faith have no value if they precede coming to know and choosing or commitment. If the Quran is read but it is not understood, it is no different from a blank book or a white notebook. Ali gives his followers awareness, greatness, chastity and freedom when they know who he is. When a book is read in our language which does not correctly give his character, when a book with his sayings is not given to his longing people, what effect can loving him, praising him, and eulogizing him have? Love and faith follow coming to know something. It is that which moves the spirit and brings up the nation. This is why the face of Fatima has remained unknown behind the eternal praise, eulogies, crying, and lamentations of her followers. In Iranian and other Islamic societies, there are three visages of woman. One is the visage of the traditional woman. Another is the visage of the new woman, European-like, who has just begun to grow and introduce herself. The third is the visage of Fatima, which has no resemblance whatsoever to that of the traditional woman. The visage of the traditional woman which has taken form in the minds of those loyal to religion in our society is as far away from the face of Fatima as Fatima's face is from the modern woman. The reality which we are facing in the world today, in the East and in particular in an Islamic and Iranian society, the contradiction which has appeared, the crisis, the change comes from the breaking down of human qualities. It comes from the creation of a very strong agitation which affects the way a society behaves and its way of thinking. Principally, the changing human form has produced a particular type of intellectually educated man and woman, modernists who contradict the traditional man or woman. This contradiction has to come into the being. There is no one potent enough to stop it. It was a compulsion which no power could have prevented. This is not to confirm this change or to deny it. That is not within the scope of this discussion. Rather, we refer to the change in society, the change in the dress of man, his thoughts, his lifestyle, and his direction in life. Women also follow this change. It is not possible that she remain in her traditional mold. In previous generations, a son was inclined to fit exactly into his father's mold. His father had no fear or apprehension that his son may be other than him. There was no difference between them. There were such strong feelings and ties between them that no doubt, no indecisive could be heard in their words. But today it is not like this. One of the peculiarities of our generation, whether in East or in the West, is the distance between the two generations. From the point of view of calendar time, their distance is 30 years, but from the point of view of society's time, 30 centuries. Yesterday, society was permanent. Values and social characteristics were incapable of change. In a period of 100, 200, 300 years, nothing changed. The foundation of the society, the forms of production and distribution, type of consummation, social relationships, government, type of religious publicity, religious ceremonies, created things, negative and positive values, art, literature, language, and all other things were the same during a father's and a grandfather's lifetime as in the lifetime of their children and grandchildren. The next topic is, in the same chapter, the worthy and the unworthy. In such fixed worlds and closed societies, where society's time stands still, men and women are of permanent type. It is perfectly natural that a daughter can be an exact copy of her mother. If there is a difference of opinion between a mother and her daughter, it only relates to extraneous things in life, or it arises from daily conflicts. If it has its roots in the difference between forbidden or corrupt personal ethics, it would have been something which all groups and all social types agree to. They all agree to and accept the same things as being corruption. It is not the case that one group considers such and such an action to be proper, whereas another group considers its description alone to be corruption, as is the case now. But in the world today, a girl, without having gone astray, without having fallen into corruption, creates a distance between herself and her mother. They are strangers to each other. An age difference of 15, 20 or 30 years separates them into two distinct people, two human beings attached to two different social circles, attached to two histories, two cultures, two languages, two visions, and two lives. Their relationship is such that only their home addresses are the same. In the external forms of society, we see the same contradiction and historic distance between two generations, two types of visions. Just as we see flocks of sheep grazing on the asphalt streets of Tehran, with the shepherd milking the sheep in front of the consumer resident of the capital, at the same time, pasteurized milk is available in the stores. Or you see a camel standing next to an automatic shift Jaguar sports car. The distance is the same as that which separated Cain and Abel from the electronic age and the automobiles. We see a mother and a daughter with this distance between them, walking shoulder to shoulder down the street, one eating a traditional Iranian ice cream and the other chewing gum. When you add these two together, you do not get a natural, permanent sum. It's obvious that the mother is beginning the last years of her life. She is pulled and preserved by the habit. The daughter, on the other hand, is just beginning the first days of her life's journey. It is clear that the days of the traditional ice cream will set in tomorrow's mother, but she will never return to the type who eats traditional ice cream. The mother and the daughter will eventually become identical. The distance in terms of social time will become one. It will be exactly the same relationship that her mother had to her grandmother. Her daughter will be a worthy child, a copy similar to the original. The change from the traditional type of mother to the new type of daughter is inevitable. Face to face with reality, whether it be the truth or an erroneous reality, it is certain beginners who think and begin to write about this phenomenon of change just hit the tip of the issue. They have not sensed the abusive language, accusations, aspersions, anger, fighting, pressure, punishment, inflictions, and deprivations. They have not sensed the chains and the irons around their necks. They have never screamed or cried out in pain. They have never fainted from loss of strength. When these observers of change in society are just beginning to touch upon these issues and predict them, they occur. The work has been done. They are wasting their efforts. As the change is swift, their results are worth less than zero. The results are worth less than zero. The opposition's front is strengthened. Those who act as guides, who give explanations and suppositions in the name of faith, belief, religion, and charity, are also mistaken in trying to save each type of form which has been inherited from the past. They try to preserve old tradition and habits and are referred into in the Quran as tales of the ancients, legends of the ancients, fathers of the old, fables of the ancients, stories of the horde. These words all refer to the first tradition, first myths, first faith fathers, but they see old as being synonymous with the tradition. As a result, they call every change, including even change in dress or hairdo, infidelity. They mistakenly believe that the spiritual source and the belief in submission, that is Islam, can only be preserved through the worship of tradition and anything which is old. They turn away from anything new, from any change, and from any rebirth. Woman, in their view, must also remain as she is today, because simply enough her form exists in the past and has become part of the social traditions. It may be 19th century, 17th century, or even pre-Islamic, but it is considered to be religious and Islamic. Therefore, it must be preserved. They accept this view because it has become part of their way of life, or because it suits their interest. They try to remain the same and hold on to things of the past forever. They say Islam wanted it to be this way. Religion has taken this form. It should remain like this until the judgment day. But the world changes. Everything changes. Mr. X and his son change, but a woman must retain her permanent form. In general terms, their point of view is that the Prophet sealed women into this form, and she must retain the inclinations which make Haji Agha, her husband, happy. He has molded her. This type of thinking tends to lead us astray. If we wish to keep the forms because of our own inexperience, the inconsiderate speed of time itself will run us over. We must realize that destruction is also a reality. The insistence upon keeping these forms will bear no fruit because society will never listen. It cannot listen because these are mortal customs. Then try to explain social traditions which have come into being through habit in religious terms. Ancient customs cannot be retained by the force of religion, for if it were so, it would mean that religion is mortal. When we equate religion and social traditions, we make Islam the guardian of declining forms of life and society. We mistake cultural and historical phenomena with inherited superstitious beliefs. Time comes along and it moves in haste. It changes habits, forms of life, social relationships, indigenous historical phenomena, and ancient cultural science. We mistakenly believe the Islamic religion to these social traditions. Aren't these great errors being committed today? Aren't we seeing them with our own eyes, with our own ears? The next subheading, 3 clear methods of problem solving. There are 3 well-known methods of problem solving. Conservatism is the method of approach used by traditionalists and guardians of the traditions. It is used by a leader who guards society, preserving phenomena with his or her total being. Knowing all the superstitions of society, he or she still preserves them because of the more important role of the guardian. The logic of the conservative is this: If we change the customs of the past, it is as if we have separated the roots from the body of a tree. Social relationships which are preserved in this custom are connected to the body and society like a hierarchy of nerves. That society will suddenly fall into anguishing difficulties which are very dangerous. That society will suddenly fall into anguishing difficulties which are very dangerous. It is exactly because of this that a great revolution, anguish and confusion and or dictators come into being. They are the binders and the bound of each other, hastily digging out the roots of social, cultural and traditional phenomena in a quick revolutionary manner will cause society to face a sudden void. The results of this void will be made apparent after the revolution subsides. Revolutionaryism is a method used by a leader who strongly and unconsciously tears out the roots of a phenomena because it is a custom-based and old superstitions, thereby making it reactionary and rotten. The reasoning of the revolutionary runs like this. By retaining outdated customs, we keep society outdated, living in the past. We will preserve stagnation. Thus, a revolutionary leader says that we should do away with all forms we inherited from the past, which clamp themselves like chains around our wrists, feet, spirit, thought, will, and vision. We should suddenly break away and face everyone, all of our relationships to the past, which were the least bit despotic or which were simply habit, should be done away with. New rules should replace them. Otherwise, society remains behind, fanatic and stagnant, bound to the past. Reformism is a method put into effect by a person who believes in gradually changing a tradition. This person lays the groundwork for a gradual change in social conditions. This is a middle way between the two. The reasoning of the reformer is just as weak as that of the other two methods. He takes a third way, believing that changes should be quiet and gradual. This method saves society from the stagnation of customs. Changes should be very gradual so that the different factions do not oppose each other. If change is gradual, the foundation of that society, their thoughts, will not take on a revolutionary form, but rather will change over a long period of time. Programs should be phased to reach this end. But the method of reformism and gradual evolution usually faces the difficulty of negative, strong reactionary forms in the hands of internal and external enemies, which occur during the long period required for this method. The goal and purpose gradually changes. These forces either stop it or destroy it. If, for instance, we wish to change the ethics of our youth, or if we wanted to enlighten the thoughts of our people, we would be destroyed before we could reach our goal. Or perhaps corrupt, provocating circumstances would dominate and deceive society and would paralyze us. A leader who tries to gradually bring about change in society through a relatively long period of time believes that he used logic in calculating his programs, but that which does not take into account the program of a neutralizing power which is against the changes. This force does not always give the time necessary in order to leisurely implement the gradual changes. The factors which were considered minor are seeking an opportunity to make themselves manifest. Then the conciliation begins to slowly spin the roots and the tables are turned. The next subheading of this chapter 7, the particular method of the Prophet stemming from his traditions. The traditions of the Prophet, which are so important in Islam, consist of the words which he spoke, the laws he brought, his conduct in relationships to deeds he performed, things he remained silent about or did not disagree with, and deeds he actually performed in his lifetime without telling others that they should perform them. The traditions of the Prophet then, as his words and his conduct. The traditions of the Prophet then are his words and his conduct. These become the rules of Islam, which are divided into two groups. First, that which existed before Islam, which was confirmed by the Prophet, that is signed rules. Second, that which had not existed previously and Islam established, which means created rules. Other than these two, in other words, signed and created rules, or the words and deeds of the Prophet, the principles of one-third, one can also be understood. It is my belief that it is the most sensitive. It is the method that the Prophet uses. The Prophet preserves the form, the container of a custom, which has deep roots in society, one which people have gotten used to from generation to generation, and one which people have gotten used to from generation to generation, and one which is practiced in a natural manner, but he changes the contents, spirit, direction, practical application of this custom in a revolutionary, decisive and immediate manner. He is inspired with a particular method which he uses in social combat as a leader of society, without producing negative results, without containing any of the weak points of the other methods. His method contains the positive characteristics of the other three. Through the customs of society which apply the break, he quickly attains his social goals. His method is this. He maintains the container of a social tradition, but inwardly changes the contents, that which it contains, in a revolutionary manner. He uses this method in reconciling social phenomena. He adopts a process and method which is a model for all problem solving. The method can be applied to two problems or two phenomena which in no way resemble each other. Recognizes how important this is. We cannot fully develop it here. We can only clarify it by a few examples. Before Islam, there was a custom of total ablution which was both a belief and a superstition. The pre-Islamic Arabs believed that when a person has sexual intercourse, he or she incarnated the jinn, the spirits which inhabited the earth, and their body and soul would be made unclean. Until they found water and performed a total ablution, they could not rid themselves of the jinn. Take as another example, for instance, the pilgrimage to Mecca. Before Islam, it was an Arab custom, full of superstitions and sister worship. It was a glorified type of idol worship which held economic advantage for the Quraysh tribe. It had gradually come to assume this form from the time of Abraham. Islam keeps the pre-Islamic custom within the content of the Abrahamic tradition for the same time that the pre-Islamic pilgrims had used it for their idol worship. They believed that Abraham, the friend of God, had built it, that is, the house Kaaba, which held their idols. The basis of the pilgrimage had been twofold: to protect the economic interests of the Quraysh merchants in Mecca and to create an artificial need among the Arab tribes for the Quraysh nobility. It was revealed to the Prophet of Islam to take the form and change it into the largest, most beautiful and deepest rite founded upon the unity of God, the oneness of mankind. The Prophet, with his revolutionary stand, takes the rite of the pilgrimage of the idol-worshipping tribes and changes it into a custom completely contrary to and opposite of its original use. It is a revolutionary leap and notion. As a result, the Arab people undergo no anguish nor separation by going back to the time of Abraham, no loss of having their values thrown together, no loss of their beliefs, but rather they sense the revival and truth for cleansing their eternal customs. They move easily from idol worship to unity, whereas centuries of history exist between them. Suddenly and more unexpectedly than any cultural or intellectual revolution, society does not realize that it had left the past. It is not aware of the fact that the building and the foundation of its idol worship have been torn down. This leap, this social method found within the tradition of the Prophet is a revolution within a custom which preserves the outer form that changes the content. That is, maintaining the container as the permanent element while changing and transforming that which is contained. Thus, the conservative, at whatever cost and in whatever form, tries to be the last of his strength to keep his customs, even if it means sacrificing himself and others. The revolutionary, on the other hand, wants to change everything into another form at one time. He wants to annihilate everything and then suddenly jump whether or not society is prepared to leap in their direction and move from phase to phase. But if they bear up under it all, and the only possibility is that of a revolution, they must turn to anger, dictatorship, judgment, and extensive public murders, not only against a person who opposes the power of the people, but also against the people themselves. A reformer always gives a corrupter the opportunity to destroy. The Prophet, through the inspired method of his work, shows us that we understand, and if we put his method into action, we will have accepted a most enlightened and correct way. A clear-visioned intellectual who is confronted by unusual customs, ancient traditions, a dead culture, and an unbelievable metamorphosis in their religion and social order, takes up the mandate of the Prophet, rather than submit to the prejudices and beliefs which remain from the past and which put one to sleep. It is this method that one can reach revolutionary goals without forcibly bearing all the conclusions and the customs of a revolution and without opposing the basis of faith and ancient social values. By doing so, one does not remove oneself from people, nor does one begin the strangers to them, so that people then turn around and condemn one because the Prophet received knowledge from the divine infinite and asked for the help of revelation and made use of it. Dear listeners, we are continuing with the reading of the book Fatima is Fatima by Dr. Ali Shariyati from the platform of Kashana-e-Baseerat. We break here in chapter number 7 and we'll continue with the same chapter. We'll go ahead with the same chapter in our next sitting, inshallah. Khuda Hafiz until then.